Greetings, my name is Slight, and today we're going to talk about what I think might be a legitimate competitive / tournamentally viable mode for the Bazaar. It's a PowerPoint, baby. Here's our goals. Let's suggest a competitive tournament viable mode, alright? Priorities. If it's 3 stars, it's high priority. If it's a 1 star, it's low priority. It needs to be actually competitive. Actually. Bold. Italicized. Allow for community to take it and run with it. Mr. Raynoodle has been very clear he wants the runoff of all esports to come back home to the promised land of the Bazaar's, transactions. That's where the money is. And so the community needs to be able to actually run a tournament. Needs to be castable or enjoyably viewable. Needs to be able to be improved upon easily and needs to have a synergistic development trajectory. More on that later. Oh, other goals. Don't act like I know shit I have no business knowing. I'll try to do that. And no QQ. Not really an issue for me, but it is an issue for a lot of people. Why should you listen to me? I'll go quick. This channel is unmonetized. I don't make any money off of this. If you watch an ad, it doesn't go to me. It goes to Big Daddy YouTube. I just want to build communities I am a part of. Used to be a Dota, like semi-pro, like 20,000, maybe 30,000 hours. I don't know. You didn't have a number when it was not on Steam, right? Lots of competitive gaming, lots of scrims. Dota's competitive. I'm a computer programmer by trade. I understand better than most what it takes to implement a software solution. Most people have no idea what it takes to implement a software solution. And you know what? That's fine. Guess what? That's not your job. That's not your job in life. And it is my job in life. That's why I know. Weekend Warrior game designer. My party game Elite will eventually come to crowdfunding. It takes a long time to design a game. It's really hard. And I know a little bit about how hard it is because of the game that I've designed. So this mode would need to be actually competitive. Any given player should have a relatively equal chance to win regardless of the hero they choose. Players should be able to be directly compared to each other on an objective metric. Players should either eliminate each other or they should be ranked at the end of the experience. Community agency. Tools will need to exist within the game to set up and host a head-to-head competitive mode. Without the ability for a player to easily set up a game, all right, there will never be a chance for the community to take agency over the competitive scene. There needs to be some development, synergy, or support. The process that is built should have key identified levers by which Tempo can adjust the experience to be better or worse. Just better. I don't know why it says or worse there. If you develop a process with few of these levers, it's bound to get stale and or figured out. It also makes it difficult to manage long term. I kind of regret some of the words I just said, but I think you get the point. There needs to be ways to improve the process. Developing something like this is best done when the development path is in confluence with outstanding development targets. This is the core of efficient development. When systems tie into each other and forward progress in one process furthers progress in another development. Okay, most people don't think about this. This is often a main objective of someone who's like a system architect, for a software implementation. They're trying to build things that are going to be synergistic together. Sometimes you do have to develop a standalone process because it's necessary, but often we can do better than that. So it also needs to be able to be turned into an esport, right? There needs to be a way to view games and cast them. While ideally this would happen in the client, that's actually a lower priority in my opinion because community organizers can simply share the player's own screen for early experiences. I think Marvel Snap did this. That being said, a way to view in-game is critical component for games like Dota 2, who has that game has amazing replay features and they're exceptional. They're extremely robust. I'm not saying that we need all that in the short term, right? But the biggest thing is it needs to tell a story, and have I got some ideas on how to do that? All right. Let's look at some existing community ideas. Throw 8 people in a lobby. Have them fight them out. Same game as ranked, but PvP, and it's just against those people in the lobby. Smacks of something close to my suggestion, but it sounds good. It has a lot of problems, though. First off, it's not competitive. Players will be playing different heroes with different RNG. This is not a good showing of skill. You might say, whoa, so what, Slight? Skill plays out in the long term, bro. You might say, bro. Yes, that's true. But now it's not, or it's less castable. Games are too long, and you'd need to play many games, all right? Games can be shortened, right? But now players are moving at a frenetic pace, which is difficult to cast. Like, let's say you paid a 30-minute timer on every single game so that you can play 6 games in a tournament day, and then you can rank everyone based on that. It's like, you're kind of losing the core of the game, right? A skill exists out there, but it's a slower skill. It's a thoughtful skill, Biggest thing here is skill plays out in the long term, but there's got to be a way that we can let skill shine without having, to play 8 lobbies with the same 8 people to get 8 games in to determine who's really the best player. I think we should aspire to a better solution. Also, what happens when one player tries for like a late game strat, but then all the ghosts are gone? How do you handle that, bro chacho? Here's some other ones. Ghost battles. Have players save off their best ghosts and fight those against each other in a gauntlet. While this does sound fun, not going to lie, it is not competitive. This type of competition, this type of experience favors those who high roll, and the more high roll ghosts you have, the more likely you are to win. There's a reason that ranked Bazaar ends after 10 days. It's balanced around that, right? High rolling also favors playing more instead of focusing on skill, so that furthers this idea of it not being very competitive. It's really just going to favor that person who plays literally 40 runs in a given day and literally does nothing else. And it's not very developmentally synergistic. It is unlikely, but technically possible, that building out a way for ghosts to battle each other is not really aligned with other existing plans that Tempo has for the Bazaar. So as of now, there's a ghost system that really is, at its core, seems to be designed around like one-time usage of ghosts, and it's possible even that they kind of purge the old records of the ghosts that are knocked out of the pool, just to kind of offload that data so that they have more data to store in the next ghost. That's a churn, right? And so moving away from that is probably something that's going to need to happen to some degree, but it's definitely not within the current synergy that's been developed. So last one here, special game modes. You might think departing from the base gameplay loop, like shortening days, taking away the PvE fights, might be a good way to speed up the interactions and make it more interesting to watch. Oh no, I don't think so. Breaking away from the core design is going to A, make this competitive mode more difficult to watch and understand. Players are likely going to play that PvP mode. That's what they understand. If you make competitive totally different, then it's like, what am I watching? Right? What is this? How does this work? And that could be interesting, but it's also going to take away from the experience. It also makes it so that there's a completely different skill set for playing competitive lobbies, right? If you're highly ranked, that skill should be transferable. And number one, like I alluded to earlier, it breaks the balance of the game. The game is just not balanced around that, so now they're going to have to balance this other mode like totally separately, and that's super anti-synergistic, right? I mean, that just means now we're having to do so much more work to get balance correct. It's a bad idea. This last one, though, is the most important. Everything I'm saying, messing with the general flow, the number of encounters, which ones are available, is a recipe for disaster. Mark my words. Let's get into it. Here's my head-to-head competitive mode. All participating players enter a lobby. Yes, I mean upwards of 100 people all competing in the same tournament. Oh, doesn't that already sound cool? The lobby will have some settings that can be adjusted, like time limits, numbers of players, etc. Tournaments will likely need to be time limited by some amount, right? We're not saying 30 minutes, although one of the cool things about this lobby is you could set a 30-minute time limit, right? Lobbies are built using approved seeds. More on this later. This is the special sauce. Players play normally, but end-of-day PvP fights are only against players within the lobby. Ghosts are generally one-time usage, just like normal ranked games. There's some wrinkles here. In the case that there is an odd number of players left, one ghost will need to be used twice, so that will need to be implemented and accounted for. And this gets very tricky very quickly. One of the reasons that rank mode works like it does is because there's sort of an endless supply of valid ghosts. But you can't stack the deck ahead of time with these ghosts that would just play against players for like the first person to get to 13 wins, right? So you got to think about that. That's actually a pretty tricky problem to solve here. So yeah, and also it's possible for players to both win or both lose versus each other's ghosts. So you can get into some really unique situations. It's not a binary like StarCraft might be, where like one player unequivocally beats another player, right? And then they move forward, right? On each of these given days, you could both beat each other just because of randomness, like one person crits here, one person crits here, and whoever crits wins, right? So both people win. You can get into some very interesting positions, right? Players may need to wait for a player's ghost to be ready to be able to do their end-of-day battle. This will be something that is new with this type of experience, right? Because you have to wait till two people get to the same day, and then both of their ghosts get snapshotted at the beginning of that PvP fight, and then they battle each other. And from there, you can get win, lose, both win, right? In the case that a player makes it to a late day fight where no other player has been, and there are no players left, key part here, and there are no players left to continue battles, they win all remaining days, all right? This is a last person standing rule, which means they are essentially unopposed for the rest of the run, and they win. That means if someone chooses a late game strategy, they tank their first 5 days, they win nothing, and then they keep winning the next like 5 or 6 fights, but then there is no one to oppose them for the next maybe 4 fights. They win those fights. Now, this is the only rule in my suggestion I think might need some tweaking. If it turns out it can be exploited, I thought a bit about this. I did some napkin stuff, and by napkin I mean I took the back of a bill envelope here and wrote out what would kind of happen as these situations occur. And I'm not 100%. This can be tweaked though. There's a way around this issue, even if this is not the solution. There's a way forward here. Okay, players are ranked at the end of the lobby of the event based on number of wins only. Super important. Okay, losses do not count, nor do they break ties. Time does not count, nor does it break ties. Players beating other players do not break ties. For multiple round tournaments, a percentage of players will make it through each round. All right. So for a 64 player tournament, the rounds might be 64, then to 24, then to 8 players over 3 rounds. Right. And so you're just taking the top percentage. I think 24 out of 64 is like 3/8 or something like that. And then 1/3 of 24 is 8. So you're just kind of taking a percentage of people into the next round. And then that ranking could have ties, right? So depending on the event, the number of players, you may have many people of the same number of wins, and they'll share a ranking, right? So it creates a little weirdness, right? For example, if 20 players get 10 wins and 8 players get 8 wins, that means 28 players would make it into round 2 for the example above, because there's no way to actually break those ties. And my case is that there's nothing wrong with that. Because the lobbies can be as big as you want and you're always taking a percentage, you can actually have it to where, you take all those people forward. The big thing here, and one thing that's not listed, is in certain cases where maybe in part of like the 8 person lobby, if 2 people manage to get like 10 wins, which is totally doable, then you can do a 1v1 Bazaar lobby. I should have mentioned that here, but that is totally within the cards and will guarantee satisfy any tiebreakers. And you can have things where, if you don't want to do this overflow thing, then you can do tiebreakers for the overflowers. So in the example here, where 20 players get 10 and 8 players get 8, you could actually make those 8 players play again just themselves and then shuffle out the tie breaks, right? So there are ways that a tournament host could actually force 24 people to move forward, or they could do the overflow. There's a lot of ways that they could handle this, right? Which is a good thing, right? So if there's an odd number of players, some ghosts may be reused. I noted this before, just wanted to get it out there again. All right, here's the secret sauce. Approved seeds. I'm just going to let that sit in for a second. Actually, uber teasing, going back. So, why do losses not count? Why does time not count? Why do players beating other players not count? Because that would not be competitive, right? The main determination of whether or not you have skill in this game is whether you can win a PvP fight, at a certain percent on every single day, all right? Your losses should not count against you unless they knock you out of the running, right? Time should not count because there's nothing that should suggest that you played better because you played faster, right? A Vanessa could have a weapon build versus a pig who's doing a full economy build who needs to buy and sell a bajillion things. So time should not be something that is a consideration for tiebreakers. Players beating other players do not break ties as well. Let's say on day 3, Fred beat Sally, and because of that, when we're actually determining who gets to go forward, because Fred beat Sally on day 3, he gets to go early. That does not actually align with what it means to be good in the Bazaar, and so it should not be rewarded, right? I just wanted to cover that real quick. The secret sauce, approved seeds. When a lobby is created, it comes with an approved seed automatically provided by the client. These are RNG seeds, which are known to provide a balanced experience for high-level play in the Bazaar. Now, if you're not familiar with what an RNG seed is, where have you been? But basically, it is essentially like a hash or what you could think of as a random number, right, that the system goes and checks against to determine what randomness it's going to generate. And the great thing about seeds is, like in Minecraft, you see this all the time, you can actually use a seed to regenerate the exact same experience, provided that all other factors are the same, right? Approved seeds are then mined by the Bazaar's client backend. Seeds will now be utilized in all ranked runs for all players. Okay, so don't freak out when I say that. What that means is, on the back end, that just means that the system will tie a seed to your ranked run, and then it will keep track of it. So those seeds will have data captured about them. Seeds which have potential to be balanced will be assigned out to more players. Seeds which show too much volatility will be blacklisted so new seeds can be mined. Do you see how this mining process works? It's using ranked PvP to actually find seeds which are balanced across all heroes, right? And then it's specifically targeting like the higher level play, like higher ranked, maybe like legend only type of things. That way you don't get some variability where like, oh, this seed is really good for new players on Mac, but on high-level players on Mac, it only performs at like 20% of what it does otherwise, right? So those seeds which show a relatively even win percent among high-level players will be saved off as an approved seed, okay? At first, and I'll just say this here, at first the lobby just needs to give you one, right? But there's ways you can improve that, like where you could pick seeds and you could like find them. And also there would probably likely be a way where you could set the client up into a specific patch dependency, right? Because approved seeds would then be patch dependent. If you change all of the exterior like if you change all the items that can generate, well, even if you use the same seed, you're going to actually generate a different outcome, right? So you actually need the patch and the seed together. That forms a unique binary, which would allow you to play a run and have it be the exact same thing. So approved seeds are patch dependent and will need to be mined from the general population of players when a new patch comes out. This means that competitive lobbies will be more chaotic right after a patch, for all the normal reasons, because it's a new patch, as well as the fact that quality seeds haven't been mined yet. Seeds will not be able to be exposed to third-party software via API and will be considered cheating to exploit. That's incredibly important. If you're trying to figure out what a seed's going to give you, then you are actually cheating as far as a competitive experience is concerned. So, casting/coverage. This is super important. In the lobby, those people who are promoted to caster within a lobby will have access to a dashboard that provides information about choices between players. I'm going to hold off. I'm just going to put a pin in some of these things here. We're going to get down the line here, and we're going to talk about an implementation roadmap here. I am no fool. I don't suggest that all of these things be there when this goes live, right? The whole point of me trying to come up with this is to say, well, what could we build first that will meet the need, and then how can we build on it? This stuff I'm covering now is the vision, right? It is the vision of what it could look like, but it doesn't mean that it's the first thing that'll roll out. So anyway, casters, they get a dashboard, bunch of information. Since the runs are seeded, this is super important. Many of the options will be similar between players, with all options being the same between the same hero. This will allow the client to show percentage breakdowns of who chose what option when. That is critical to the ability to cast and cover this type of game, in my opinion. Because, sure, everyone's going to be given the same options as a hero. That actually simplifies the viewing experience, right? And it adds complexity to the players who are playing, because they know every time they face a Mac player, that Mac has been given pretty much all the same options as every other Mac, right? And so they can build a framework of what map looks like, what map builds could be out there, right? And it's more limited than ranked, right? There's so much more to engage with there. That gets me super excited. Seems super cool, right? Player boards will able to be compared in real time from this sort of dashboard, right? So let's say there's like 3 people who are all like, you know, on the track. They haven't lost anything. They're at 7 wins, you know. You could like click them, they'd pop up for you and you'd be able to see them. And you would compare like, oh, we've got 2 Pygmalions. Both of them are going this build. And then this Vanessa managed to get like this thing that none of the other players got. And that's been like really strong for that player. And some lucky crits, you know, that kind of stuff, right? Player decision similarity will be able to be compared, potentially able to pinpoint critical decisions where different decisions were made between different runs. So I can think of this as sort of a map, like a visualization of all of the runs for like a given hero and where that changed and diverged, right? All of this is something that is going to bring you into the experience. It's going to unveil the complexity of like 128 players all playing in the same lobby, right? And that's super interesting. So since the pool of player gets smaller and smaller, the type of experience changes dramatically between rounds, which tells a more interesting story. 64 players is going to feel more like normal ranked, but you kind of have that knowledge that everyone's playing on the same seed, so every Mac is getting the same choices. Every Vanessa is getting the same choices. You're going to see some similarity between the players, but it's not necessarily always going to be exactly the same because, you know, you click, you may get slightly different crits. Just because you have the same seed doesn't mean that every single thing is exactly the same. It means it starts off at the same position. If you make a decision that has cascading effects on your RNG position, that could really change the state of your game in a way that's very big, right? And some of that comes down to how exactly, from a technical aspect, the seed affects a run. And there's ways that you could think about that and implement that. And I will leave that for the people who are actually technically involved in that process, should this type of thing be implemented. All that being said, regardless of what 64 players feels like, whether it does have some interesting aspects to it, even if it feels like normal ranked, once you get to 8 players, it's going to feel a lot more intimate. You fought Sally on day 2, and now you know what that player has, right? You know what they have, and you can think about that for your next days, right? And 8 players is, you can really kind of try to keep track of what might be out there and build around it. And then 2 players is you are just trying to directly counter each other. And there's so much interesting things that could happen here where people are offloading stuff off their board, intentionally hiding it, and then moving it into play at a position where I'm going for this shield build, and I can see him leaning into poison because he thinks I'm all in on shield, and then bam, I'm like, I've been hoarding all these ammo items and I kill him in 3 seconds. That kind of stuff is going to be absolutely electric. I mean, super, super cool. A lot of really cool options there when you have like a 2-player encounter in a lobby. But the biggest thing is that this tells a story for the event, right? What makes casting and coverage fun is the stories of the players as they go through a tournament event, as they go through this experience. And that's going to be absolutely magnified. It is going to be like the seasoning on steak, that each of these rounds has more nuance and changes a little bit, and we get to see the players and their decisions come alive even more, right? All of that, chef's kiss, is going to be wonderful if that can be implemented. But in my mind, it is critical that this comes from those approved seeds, because it will not be nearly as interesting or compelling if it cannot be balanced. And it is an incredibly tough challenge to find another way to provide a balanced experience for a competitive environment like this without players playing so many games, right? So, this is a quick one. What are some tournament rules? Players would be allowed to pick any hero on each round. They're not locked in for the whole tournament. Players are not allowed to know the percentage of heroes that have been picked until after each round. So you get to see who you see to play against in your PvP fights. That's all you get. And players may not concede under any circumstance. This will count as forfeiture of the tournament. So even if they are on 7 wins and they know they're going to get further, they have to fully play out their run. And the main reason is for like ghost interactions and to avoid exploitation of like communication between players or something like that. Players must finish out and they will always be forced to play out every single one, and it's a ghost thing is my understanding. So we're almost done here. Let's go through the technical implementation roadmap. If you have never built a system or anything like this, this might be a little bit of an interesting thing to you. But one of the things that's always worth considering is what is the minimum viable product that you're going to actually produce and hit the shelves with that'll actually get a system up and running to do what it needs to do, right? And then you can just add on to that, right? So the next slide that I have here will be all the things we can sort of add on to this minimum viable product, right? The number one is seeds. And the great thing, this might already be implemented in some way, but tie every single run to a seed in the client architecture, be able to collect like a win percents per hero on that seed, general stats, everything you need to know to build a system to assign out and identify good or bad seeds relatively quickly, all right? Next is lobby. You don't need a friends list, but this is on the way to friends lists, right? This is a you know, you're getting to the point where people are probably going to be in a chat room, right? But we don't necessarily need a friends list yet. Share a code to a player outside of the game, then use that code to join the lobby, right? So this way I don't have to friend you and then add you to the lobby. I send out a code. That code goes to a player. They use that to join a lobby, right? Easy. This system, a system to allow players to only fight within the lobby, with contingencies for special edge cases when there's an odd number of player or a player gets to a day that is later than anyone else in the lobby. That'll have to be specifically built for this experience. Ranked players based on wins. So at the end of the lobby, once the entire event is done, there should be a way that it shows who got what, how everyone scored, yada, yada, yada. All lobbies will utilize an approved seed. So that fits into the seeding for the minimum viable product. You could take a pit stop here and not do the seeds and just build the lobbies first. Obviously, that would work, but you're going to lose out on that competitive experience. And I think that you're going to gain a lot of clout from people if you can say, hey, we built you this competitive experience, and here's why it's competitive. Here's exactly why it actually is going to work. And I would say that it's probably a good idea to actually put a pretty high limit on player number. You know, you can build out small lobbies on the test client, right? But I don't know if I would go live without being able to throw 64 people into the same thing, because I think in the way that I see the tournaments working and the way I see that progression of the experience that's so interesting and viewable from a casting experience is you kind of want to throw everyone into one tournament, right? You just want to put everyone into the same run, right? And see what shakes out from that. That's just my own opinion. Okay. Some future improvements, ability to choose seeds from a list. You know, this will be especially useful, for tournaments to ensure like the same seed isn't used again. Seed viability stats. So like, I'm sure that at the, dynamic nature of finding good seeds and mining them, there will be seeds that are more or less have a higher or lower confidence score, with like basically overall health check, the number of times it's gone through a ranked run, being able to see all that and choose ones that are optimal will be good. Ability to promote players to casters. You really don't need that at first. Players can share their screens. People can cast by looking at the screens. It's not perfect, but it would, that's the way it'll go, right? One that'll be good is like an ability to save particularly good seeds specifically for tournament play. So like you can go, a tournament's coming up for like someone that you're involved with, and you can actually, cordon off some really perfect kind of seeds just for that tournament play. And ability to do normal runs using past tournament seeds as a way to practice. Doesn't that sound so fun? I got to see, Taj Sama in a tournament, and he played Vanessa on this seed. I want to play that same seed in a normal run, super fun, right? So casting coverage improvements, ability to see all runs from a glance, ability to compare boards and decision trees, ability to see major decision differences, sort all of this information by hero and by win amount, clicking into a run and seeing it real time, ability for players to watch the tournament in game, and I say players, I mean viewers. I mean that I want to go and watch the tournament, and I want to do so from in game, and I want to hear the caster, right? Again, these are just future improvements, not high priority. In-game rewards for tournament wins, like it would be really cool if you could like have special items specific to the tournament that you win and can put on your board, and you only get from winning tournaments that are sort of approved by Tempo, and then special rewards for players who are watching the tournament in game. So, yeah, that's my idea. I spent a while thinking about it. I think it's pretty well fleshed out. I really think that in my mind, is what I would need to connect with the Bazaar as a competitive experience. Granted, obligatory, what the hell do I know? Maybe there's a better way, I've only been thinking about this for this past week. Someone else might have been thinking about this for years, and they might have a way better way to do this. So, anyway, hopefully that was interesting, and we'll see what happens.